The supercharger whine was louder than my racing heartbeat. I was amazed my heart could even beat in its condition. Tears blurred my vision, and I figured I should slow down before I wrecked my only possession. As my speed dropped, I heard sirens again. I thought the cops would give up after 140 miles per hour, but no luck. Screw it, I thought. I pulled over and waited for the police. Maybe jail would be an escape from my nightmare life. The cop approached, surprisingly, without his weapon. "Jesus, Grant," he said. "Do you know how fast you were going?" It was Fred Lively, an old friend turned cop. I wondered how our friendship would hold up now that I was a speeder, or rather, a felon, as driving over 100 miles per hour was a felony in some states. "What's wrong?" Fred asked. He'd been at the hospital earlier. It was hard to believe that today had started as the happiest day of my life. I was at the hospital for the birth of my daughter. After complications, they sent me home since I'd been there all night. My wife Bonnie, who is over 35, gave birth to our baby who had an inguinal hernia. Though not serious, it required surgery. It was more common now with older mothers, and Bonnie, at 36, wasn't the healthiest. I loved her dearly. I had worn a bright yellow t-shirt with a smiley face and "My name is Daddy" on the back to show my pride. Now it just made me feel foolish. Fred reminisced about when his youngest was born. I realized I was locked in for 18 more years. It drove me a bit crazy. He shared his struggles with male postpartum depression, something not often recognized. "Bonnie is upset about you leaving the hospital," he said. "Why don't I escort you back?" "Fred, I just want to go home and think," I replied. "I'll drive under the speed limit. You can escort me if you want." "No need for that, Grant," he said. "Drive safely." Fred put on his sunglasses and drove off. I went home to the house Bonnie and I had shared for 11 years. I was 23 and she was 25 when we moved in. Despite our differences, we fit together perfectly. Now, I waited for her to come home and assure me everything would be fine, but it wouldn't be. Everything was messed up. I considered having a beer on the deck, but I needed to move to think. I went upstairs, changed into running shorts, threw away the yellow t-shirt, grabbed my iPod, and headed out to run the trails behind our house.
My name is Bonnie Martin, and I feel empty and lonely, even though I'm surrounded by family and friends. They likely think I'm just tired or sore from giving birth yesterday. Only my closest friends and family have an idea why I'm upset. They know it's because my husband, Grant, left the hospital unexpectedly. My dad tried to comfort me, saying that the birth of a child is tough on fathers too. He shared that when I was born, he felt overwhelmed and wanted to run away, but assured me Grant would be back soon. "Grant is tough," Dad said. "He cut Brandy's umbilical cord. He'll be back any second." Brandy, our youngest daughter, was born yesterday. We named her Brandy as a blend of our names. I have two other daughters, Marie, 14, from a previous relationship, and Tara, 8, whom we adopted. Grant has always been a loving father to Marie, treating her as his own from the start. When we got married, Marie even stood with us at the altar saying "me too" during our vows. Our life has been idyllic. No arguments, financial stability, and a great bed life. We even had spontaneous hooky-nooky sessions up until I got pregnant. I wanted to experience pregnancy with Grant since my first pregnancy with Marie was difficult and filled with disappointment from my parents. Despite our efforts, we found out Grant had a low seed count, making it difficult to conceive. After adopting Tara, we wanted to share the pregnancy experience, but it never happened. I wanted to see life like those pregnant women on TV, with a loving partner rubbing my belly, going to birthing classes, and picking out names. Maybe it was my bad memory of being pregnant with Marie or wanting to share the entire experience with Grant. I would have had 100 babies with Grant if he wanted. Feeling overwhelmed, I told my mom I was tired and wanted to sleep. She cleared the room, and as I reached for the table beside the bed, a wave of pain almost made me black out. As I gasped in pain, my mother slapped my hand. "Bonnie, don't you want to go home?" she snapped. "If you tear your stitches, Brandy may go home before you do. What are you reaching for?" "My phone," I said. "I need to call Grant." She handed me the phone without a word. I pressed the one key on my BlackBerry to call Grant's iPhone. Our phones were set to connect automatically, and we had personalized ringtones for each other. The phone rang twice before going to voicemail, which meant Grant had manually sent my call there. He didn't want to talk to me. I pretended to have a conversation to fool my mother. She watched, smiling, and when I hung up, She kissed my forehead and told me to sleep. As she left, she asked, "Why didn't Grant come back?" My mother was a big fan of Grant, too. He's not feeling well," I said. "The nurse probably told him not to risk making Brandy sick because of her complications." "That's silly," my mom replied. "Why?" I asked. "I think it's great he wants to be careful with his daughter. Remember, Brandy had surgery last night," she said. "Grant gave blood and told the doctor to make sure it was used for her. If being around him could make her sick, surely his blood could too." I was shocked by her words. I didn't know if it was true that blood from someone with a cold could make you sick, but I realized my situation might unravel. "In fact," my mom continued, "Grant ran out of here after speaking to the doctor again this morning." I needed to get my mother out before I broke down. "Mom, could you send Brenda in on your way out?" I said. She looked puzzled but nodded and left the room.
I had to be careful while running as I wasn't paying much attention to where I was going. Running trails differ from tracks or roads. The surface changes and can be unstable, especially after rain. I ran at a good pace, trying to lose myself in the music on my iPod shuffle, which played random songs. Somehow, it felt like everything was planned by a higher power, as if my luck had run out. My iPod played an Amy Lee song that hit too close to home. Her lyrics about failed relationships felt personal. Meeting Bonnie had felt like destiny, but now our relationship was in shambles, and I couldn't understand why I ever loved her. Bonnie had initially doubted us due to past experiences, but after I persistently pursued her, she eventually agreed to a date. On that date, she tripped, I caught her, and we knew we were meant to be. Despite our differences, we fell in love. In high school and college, I was popular, played sports, and enjoyed partying. I never settled down, enjoying the freedom and attention from various girls. I figured I'd settle down later in life. Bonnie, on the other hand, had joined a convent right after high school. Before taking her final vows, she took a leave, lost her pureness, and then went on a spree of relationships until she found herself pregnant. She moved back with her parents and focused on raising her daughter Marie, swearing off men. Convincing Bonnie to date me was hard. She was dedicated to giving Marie the best life and had no time for romance. Our first date was simple, an early movie and ice cream. When she slipped and I caught her, it felt magical. She often says she saw our future children in my eyes that night. Bonnie's past and my reluctance to commit made our connection unlikely, but somehow we made it work. Now, as I ran, I was overwhelmed by how much everything had changed. Meeting Marie for the first time was nerve-wracking because my future with Bonnie depended on her. We were supposed to go to the park for our first date with Marie, but Bonnie wanted to impress me. Bonnie isn't a supermodel. She's beautiful but curvy with big legs, a big bum, and huge bosom. I wouldn't change her for anything. I love snuggling up to her at night. Back to the date. I was more nervous about meeting Marie than Bonnie's parents. When introduced, Marie, a 3-year-old, burst into rapid-fire chatter, showing me 4 fingers to indicate her age. She asked if I knew how to play jacks and ran off to get them. Bonnie, half-dressed, ran in angrily asking what I did to Marie. I was confused but ready to leave. Suddenly, Marie returned with her jacks and insisted we play. Bonnie realized her shirt was unbuttoned and fixed it, saying she wanted me to stay. From then on, we were inseparable. We married, adopted another girl, and lived happily. About 9 months ago, Bonnie told me she was pregnant. We were ecstatic since we thought we'd never have a child together. Bonnie had strong feelings about pregnancy, seeing it as the ultimate expression of love. Each day she grew bigger and happier and even hornier. I reassured her that the few pounds she gained made her more attractive to me. Yesterday should have been the happiest day of my life, but it turned to despair when a doctor mentioned Brandy's biological father. I realized Brandy wasn't mine, and Bonnie had known it. I felt betrayed and needed to get out of the hospital. Pushing past well-wishers, I left the room before the walls closed in on me. The nurse told me my wife had just woken up and asked for me. Meanwhile, friends and Bonnie's sister Brenda were teasing me, calling me daddy, sarcastically because of my shirt. I felt like a joke. It was like a Twilight Zone episode with everyone mocking me. The nurse insisted, "Daddy, your wife wants to see you badly. She needs a kiss." "Better not go," someone joked. "That's what started this." Their voices seemed distorted and dripping with sarcasm. I felt intense hatred towards them. "Screw her," I shouted, silencing the room. Someone finally broke the silence with, "You already did. That's why we're here." Next, I remember being in the parking lot, starting my car and peeling out, lost in thought. I ran faster on the trails, accompanied only by Amy Lee's depressing music. Back at the hospital, Brenda entered her sister's room. Despite their shared upbringing, Bonnie and Brenda were very different. Bonnie, voluptuous and family-oriented, had joined a convent while svelte Brenda became a model and avoided motherhood, even getting her tubes tied at 22. Brenda found Bonnie looking disheveled and emotional in the hospital bed. She couldn't understand why anyone would go through such an ordeal for a child. Bonnie had gained at least 20 pounds, and Brenda thought she was lucky Grant loved her. "Hi, sis. You wanted to see me?" Brenda asked. "I need a favor," Bonnie replied. "I need you to talk to Grant." "Isn't he coming here?" Brenda asked. "I did something stupid and bad for the best reason. I did it for Grant, but he won't see it that way," Bonnie said, crying. "Okay, I'll go," Brenda agreed, uncomfortable with the emotion. "What should I say?" Brenda asked. "Just ask him to call or see me. Tell him I love him and we can get past this. I made a mistake," Bonnie said. Brenda shook her head and left. Relationships seemed like too much work to her, with too much misery for fleeting happiness. Meanwhile, Grant returned home after a good run. The girls would be excited to hear he saw a deer, squirrels, chipmunks, a raccoon, and a skunk. Dragging his tired body inside, he realized the house no longer felt like home. He had tried to exhaust himself to avoid thinking about Bonnie's betrayal, which affected the entire family, not just him. For 11 years, Marie had been his daughter, and he loved her deeply. But in a fit of anger, he questioned her parentage. Despite spending more time with Marie than anyone else, he felt betrayed by the thought that she might not be his biological child. Tara was adopted, and now Brandy, born of Bonnie's infidelity, felt like a symbol of that betrayal. Grant reflected on Bonnie's past wild days and felt their relationship meant nothing to her. She had deceived him, making him raise another man's child. He contemplated divorce and how it would impact his daughters. He considered fighting for custody but worried about the girls needing a female influence. If Bonnie got custody, he'd miss out on their lives. The best short-term solution was to stay with Bonnie for the sake of the girls, but he knew he could never accept or love Brandy. He imagined a scenario where they pretended to be a family until the girls were older. This meant daily contact with Bonnie and her baby, a constant reminder of her betrayal. Grant decided he could handle it for the girls' sake, but with conditions. No relationship with Bonnie beyond co-parenting, no lovemaking, no affection, and Bonnie would sleep in the basement. Just then, he heard a tapping on the fence. Annoyed, he walked across the yard and opened the gate. Bonnie's sister Brenda stood at the gate. "Hi, Grant," she said, with a smile that was more frosty than warm. I hugged her, but she just stood there, unresponsive. "Bonnie wants you to call her. She says she loves you, made a mistake, and you can get past this." She waited for me to respond, making the moment awkward. "Nope," I said. "I have nothing to say to her, period." Brenda sighed. "The doctor is letting her come home tomorrow. You can talk then, right?" "Tell her not to come back here. I don't want her or her baby. She can stay with your parents." Brenda was shocked. "What's going on? You and Bonnie are in love. Why can't she come home?" "Ask her to explain," I snapped. "Mom and Dad have Marie and Tara. There's no room for Bonnie and the baby. Figure it out. My girls can come home or stay with your parents. Bonnie can move in with you." "I'll tell her," Brenda said, walking to her car. Before leaving, she added, "I know she loves you very much." I closed the gate and went back to drinking. After a while, my phone rang. It was Bonnie, tearful. "Grant, why can't I come home? We need to work this out." "But you what?" I yelled. "You got bored and cheated?" "No, I did it for us," she said. I was speechless. I hung up. She called back, but I didn't answer. Later, the phone rang again, this time from her parents' house. I answered out of respect. "Daddy, I have a question," said Marie. "Hi, Angel," I croaked. "If you're home, why am I stuck at Grandma's? Come and get me." "I'd love to, but I've had a couple of beers. I shouldn't drive, especially with you in the car." "Oh, Daddy," she giggled. "I'm 14 now, not a baby." "You'll always be my baby," I said. Then I heard Tara. "Daddy, I'm your baby. Brandy can be Mom's baby." I laughed. Then Bonnie's father came on the line. "Grant, what's going on? Bonnie's been crying all day. You need to talk to her. You can't resolve anything without talking." "You're right, sir," I said. "I'll go to the hospital tomorrow." "Aren't you bringing her home?" he asked. "Maybe, but it's unlikely," I replied. The next morning, I went to the hospital. Some people cheered, assuming I'd come back. I ignored them and went to Bonnie's room. A nurse was disconnecting her from the monitors. Bonnie's face lit up when she saw me, but I stayed distant. The nurse left, and Bonnie invited me to sit by her, asking me to lock the door. "Why did you lie to our daughter last night?" she asked. "I didn't think I should bring her home without asking you," I said. "Grant, when I didn't want her to play volleyball, you signed her up anyway without asking me. But now, because of my mistake, you suddenly need my permission to bring her home," she snapped. "I'm not her father. I'm her dad," I said. "You're lucky I can't get up right now," she said. "You're her dad, her daddy, and her father. Don't let your ego hurt our daughter. I messed up, not her." "So I can take her and Tara home?" I asked. "Of course. They belong with you," she said. "That should make things easier for your parents," I said. "Yes, they'll get some peace and privacy back. You know they still do it, right? We'll be like that too." "How will they have privacy with a baby crying?" I asked. "Brenda said there's no room for you, the baby, and the girls at your parents' house. If I take the girls, there shouldn't be a problem, right?" Bonnie looked deflated. "What do you mean, until we work this out? It sounds like we might not. And what do you mean, my baby? She's our baby. You spoke to her every day in my womb, and now you want to abandon her? That's nonsense, Grant." Bonnie tried to sit up, wincing in pain. But I was unmoved. "Don't you see, honey? It was the perfect pregnancy. It brought us closer together. This was everything I dreamed of." Suddenly, I realized the truth. I had thought Bonnie's pregnancy was an accident or her reverting to old habits, but it was a planned betrayal. She cheated to get pregnant and tricked me into thinking the child was mine. My heart hurt even more. My eyes filled with tears, and I had to look away. "Do you understand now? I needed us to have a baby together. I love you so much, and I wanted to share this experience. I dreamed of your seed growing into a mini-us. It just didn't happen. So I did it another way, but I swear she'll be all yours, just like the others. No one will ever know." "Yeah," I said slowly, trying to keep the anger out of my voice. "No one will ever know that the woman I loved cheated to fulfill her fantasy. They won't know that our life together wasn't enough for you or that you broke my heart, but they'll know this farce ended. We're over." "No, we're not," she screamed. "I love you, Grant. It was just love-making, only twice. I hate that guy. I did it for us and our baby. It's over now. We'll be fine." "No, Bonnie, we were fine. We had a great life, you, me, and our girls, but you ruined it," I said. "I had 3 plans to fix this, but now I can't decide anything with you. I'll never trust you again." "What were the plans?" she asked quietly. "Divorce, and I get custody," I said. "Are you crazy?" she asked. "No, I didn't want custody of your baby, just the other 2. "What about me?" she asked. "Who'd get custody of me?" "I don't care. Maybe your lover." "He's not as good as you. I don't love him. He doesn't love me. I used him," she said sadly. Bonnie looked at me pleadingly. We heard a key turning in the lock, but the door didn't open. "Are the other plans better?" "I don't like that one," she said. "I don't want anything where we're not together." "Divorce, and you get custody. I pay child support for the 2 I thought were mine. No alimony. Your lover can support you. I get visitation." "That's worse," she said. "Marie and Tara would hate me. Brandy would be confused." Her look told me she wanted to hear the last plan. "We pretend we're still married for the girls," I said. She smiled. "I could live with that," she said. "Could you live with it for 10 years? I asked. "Hell yes," she said. "That gives me the best chance to keep my family together, and I know you'll forgive me and love Brandy." "It's not going to happen, Bonnie," I snapped. "It would be a pretend marriage, only for the girls. We'd build a room in the basement for you and the baby. No relationship between us." Her jaw dropped. "I chose 10 years because Tara will be in college then. We can go our separate ways. This is about the girls. The house would be off limits to your lovers. When I'm ready to date, I won't bring anyone here either." "You've got this all wrong, Grant," she sniffled. "I love you. Not being able to touch you hurts me. Whether you know it or not, you love me too. I could have you back in my bed in a week. I don't want any lovemaking buddies except you. In over 10 years, I've never slept with anyone but you. I wanted us to share something. I made a mistake, but we're married. We always will be. I don't want anyone else. Brandy would only be 10 when you leave. She'd be too young to understand. She's your daughter, Grant. She was conceived with you in mind, and you'll love her as much as the others." "No," I said. "No?" she asked. "No to all of that," I snapped, my voice rising. A couple of heads poked in through the door, but I didn't care. I won't interact with your daughter. She's too much of a reminder of what I've lost. I don't care if she doesn't understand losing me because I'm not her father. I don't love you anymore, Bonnie." She looked stunned and started crying. "You did this to us. Your games burned up all the love I had for you. I don't think you ever really loved me. If you did, you'd see this from my side. Even if we tried the pretend marriage, it wouldn't work. I can't stand being around you, and I'm not as easy to seduce as you think. I loved you, but that's over. Forget the fake marriage. First thing Monday, I'm filing for divorce." I walked out past several shocked faces. Bonnie's father followed me. "Grant, stop," he called. I slowed down so he could catch up. "What the hell is going on?" he asked. We were outside the hospital when he pulled me onto a bench in the parking lot. He handed me a handkerchief and looked away as I wiped my tears. "Grant, you have to let us help you to fix this," he said. "Bonnie's been crying all day. This has to do with the new baby, doesn't it?" I nodded. "I heard some of it," he said. "You love Marie and Tara like they're your own. Why were you yelling about Bonnie's daughter?" "Bonnie wanted another baby so badly she cheated to get pregnant. It wasn't just once. She planned the whole thing and lied to me about it. If not for an overworked doctor, I'd never have known. I'm not going along with her plan," I said. "I feel like I'm stuck in a nightmare and just want out." "What do you want to do?" he asked. "I'm filing for divorce," I told him. He looked shocked and tired. "Bonnie said it's okay for me to take the girls home. Verify with her if you need to." "No, son. If you're splitting up, you'll both want time with them. You don't have enough room for Bonnie, the baby, and the girls." "That's true, sir. But my house has no space for Bonnie and her child. You and Mary can visit any time. You can take the girls to see their mother and half-sister. I hope we can all still be friends. I don't want anything bad to happen to Bonnie, but she hurt me too much." "You don't think this is temporary?" he asked. "No, sir. When you speak to her, remind her that a quick, simple divorce is best. I'll pay child support for my girls, but not for Bonnie's child or any alimony. I won't pay for her betrayal. If it comes down to it, she's admitted to fraud, which could get me custody and her in jail. I want this for Marie and Tara. They need the best life possible, even if it means a divorce." The next few days were tough. Bonnie moved to her parents' house, and I took the girls to visit her but didn't go in. Bonnie kept calling and sending her parents to talk to me. Surprisingly, Brenda was the most understanding. One night, Bonnie convinced Brenda to bring her to my house. She knocked loudly, trying to get in. I called her and told her she'd wake the girls. She begged to hear my voice, promising to leave if I spoke to her. I stepped out and saw Bonnie and Brenda on the porch. I sat on the porch railing opposite the chairs. "Hey, Brenda," I said, smiling. Then I turned to Bonnie and let my smile fade, showing all my anger and revulsion. "You have 2 minutes," I said coldly. "How are the girls?" she asked. "They're fine," I replied, telling her about our day. She smiled. "I always knew you'd be a great father. It's hard to believe you haven't visited your other daughter who needs you. Time flies when you're listening to nonsense. Your time is up. If you bang on my door again, I'll call the police." She reached for me. "Grant, I love you. Please forgive me and give Brandy a chance." As I closed the door, I heard Brenda say, "Leave him alone, Bonnie. You've done enough. He's hurting too. You did this." Bonnie snapped back. "Shut up, Brenda. He's mine and he always will be. I'm not letting him divorce me." The next morning, I made breakfast for my daughters and dropped them off at school. "Brandy comes home today, Daddy," Marie said. "That's great, Angel," I said, trying to hide my anger. "Remember the rules, Daddy," Tara added. "What rules, baby?" I asked. "What rules, baby?" I asked. "Marie is too old to be your baby. I'm your baby, and Brandy is Mom's baby," she said. I laughed and let them out, then drove to work. After 3 unproductive hours, my secretary Joan told me I had urgent calls from the police and the hospital. I took the police call first. My house had been broken into. I rushed home in my Camaro. The alarm wasn't on, even though I was sure I set it. 2 officers showed me a broken window. Inside, nothing was ransacked, but the breakfast dishes were cleaned, the laundry was done, and some pictures and Bonnie's items were missing. Bonnie had broken in, turned off the alarm, and cleaned up. I explained to the officers, who left after I declined to press charges. I wondered why Bonnie hadn't taken our wedding album, one of her favorite things. I found a note on top of it. "Dearest Grant, I'm sorry I didn't love you at first sight like you did me. Still, you've always been more important to me than I am to you. You could have chosen anyone, but you chose me. a chunky girl with a kid, which showed your love. I had to think of my daughter, so it took time for my love to grow into an obsession. I would do anything to keep you in my life because no one else could ever compare to you. My wild past taught me that no one made me feel like you did. When you said my lover and I laughed at you, you were half right. He never knew about you. I didn't mention I was married. I laughed at the idea that anyone could replace you. He didn't even remember me from before, showing how shallow he is. I needed him because he was quick and potent, unlike you. I knew he could get me pregnant quickly and he wouldn't care about the child, just like with Marie. She's always been yours. I thought this would be a good thing. I didn't enjoy the lovemaking. I used lube, didn't kiss, didn't move, and didn't end. Both times were terrible and I showered multiple times afterward. I only felt better after making love to you. I was relieved when I got pregnant because it meant I wouldn't have to see him again. I did this to share something wonderful with you, not to tear us apart. It seemed like a small sacrifice for a great reward. My body has always belonged to you, and I didn't think letting someone borrow a tiny part would make you reject me, especially for something we both wanted. You love Marie with all your heart. If having her required me to sleep with someone else, would you say no, knowing how much you love her now? It's the same with Brandy. Despite everything, Brandy is your daughter. You helped create her, even if biologically she isn't yours. You signed her birth certificate, making you her legal father. I'm not trying to trap you. I'm showing you who you are. I believe you'll love Brandy as much as you love your other daughters. I love you more than anything. Being apart will hurt, but I'd sacrifice anything for our children. I hope time will heal us and make us stronger. Yours forever, Bonnie. I had no idea what she was talking about. In a few months, we'd be divorced, and the court would decide custody of our daughters. My heart missed Bonnie, but my pride wouldn't allow forgiveness. Reading her letter didn't change my mind. I still wasn't ready to forgive her, but I wanted to find this guy and break his bones for abandoning Marie. Then the phone rang. It was the hospital again, probably Bonnie wondering if I'd read her letter. "What?" I said into the phone. "Grant, you have to come over here now," said Bonnie's mother, Mary. "Jim has had a heart attack, and there's a problem with Brandy." Brandy is not my problem, I thought. I couldn't have been more wrong. At the hospital, 2 nurses tried to pull me in opposite directions. One, a stern black woman, wanted to take me to pediatrics, while the other, from the cardiac unit, had a kinder expression. The cardiac nurse won. "I hate deadbeat dads," said the black woman as she let me go. "I'll come and pay or sign the papers so my health care can take care of it until the divorce goes through," I said. She looked confused and left. In the cardiac ward, I saw Jim. His heart attack had been mild. Mary was by his side. "He'll be laid up for a while," she said. "I'm sorry I won't be much help, but my husband has to take first priority." "Don't worry about it, Mary," I said. "I can handle my girls. If there's a problem, I can always call Bonnie." Mary looked at me and said, "No one told you?" "Told me what?" I asked. A doctor took Mary to talk about Jim's care. I decided to find Bonnie to get some answers. The mean nurse grabbed my hand and led me to pediatrics. "We've been calling you all day," she snapped. "Your wife disappearing is hard, but you still have responsibilities." She handed me papers to sign and put the baby in my arms, forcing me into a wheelchair. "You're lucky we're busy today," she snapped. "When you didn't pick her up this morning, we should have called family services and had you arrested. What kind of an idiot abandons a newborn?" I sat in the wheelchair, shocked. If Brenda hadn't walked by, I might still be sitting there. "Mom told me to help you," said Brenda. "Dad will be fine with some restrictions. Mom's more worried about you." Brenda asked a friend to drive her car to my house. He didn't complain, probably because Brenda is so attractive. "Here, Brenda, why don't you take the baby?" I said. "Oh no," she said. "I have no maternal instincts. You're the super dad. You can handle it." We went to my Camaro. I'd need to find the new car seat we'd bought. As we drove, Brenda said, "That is the weirdest thing." "What?" I asked. "She's quiet and calm. I've never seen this baby quiet." "Are you sure they gave you the right one?" "Don't start," I said. "I'm only keeping her until Bonnie gets back. Meanwhile, I'm going ahead with my divorce plans and maybe get Bonnie charged with abandonment." "Huh," she said. "I'm serious, Brenda. This is nonsense." "Huh," she repeated. "I'll give her 2 days to get back. Then I'm taking the baby to social services." "Huh," said Brenda as we pulled up to my house. "Do you need anything?" she asked. "No," I said. "We have everything we need." "Grant, you're a great guy," she said. "What Bonnie did was wrong. She's tearing herself up over losing you. I think she started to resent the baby. She needs to get her head straight. Please don't take it out on the baby. Settle your issues with Bonnie when she gets back." I realized she was right and nodded. "Grant!" Brenda said, grabbing my face. It was the first time I remember her reaching out to touch anyone. I meant it when I said you're the only person who calms her. She wasn't even this peaceful with Bonnie. Maybe she sensed her mommy's distress. You're the best man I know. Let my niece feel that. You don't have to accept her as your child, but she is related to you. Marie is still yours, isn't she? Of course she is, I spat. Then accept Brandy as Marie and Tara's half-sister, if not your daughter. Think of her as their cousin or something. She's part of your family. I nodded grudgingly. I loved her so much, Brenda, I said sadly. Grant, she still loves you. She hasn't given up on you. There's no one else for her, she said. She was about to say more, but we were interrupted by the girls running out of the house, excitedly cooing at the baby. They didn't notice their mother's absence. I sensed challenging times ahead. Meanwhile, Bonnie was at the convent. Walking down the familiar halls, I wore a somber expression, not out of respect, but because my heart was breaking. I missed Grant so much that it felt unbearable. If this plan didn't work, I still might consider other options, including giving up entirely. Once, I expected to live my life within these walls, maybe as a teacher, but that was over 10 years ago.
Bonnie, how good it is to see you again, said Reverend Mother Agnes. She was Sister Agnes when I was here, and she was old then. She's ancient now. Her face still had some of the smile I remembered, but she looked much more serious and strong in spirit, if not in body. It's good to see you again too, Mother Agnes, I said. Bonnie, you're here as a lay worker to help us. No need for formality. We're still friends. Call me Agnes. We discussed my duties. I'd be installing a computer system in the convent, which could take years. I hoped to finish sooner so I could return to my family. Grant's solutions to my betrayal were unacceptable, and none of my ideas were any good either. I even considered giving Brandy up for adoption, which Grant hadn't suggested because we both believe a child needs their parents. Grant was being stubborn, but I couldn't abandon my daughter's father. I loved Brandy, but if I had to choose between her and Grant, she'd lose. I'd find her a good home, maybe with family, but I couldn't take their father away from them. Alone in my room, I watched Grant on my iPad, holding Brandy and rocking her to sleep. Marie followed him everywhere, and I knew she would choose to stay with him if it came to a divorce. Grant handed Brandy to Marie so he could stand up, then took her back and put her to bed. He read Tara a bedtime story while Marie looked at something in her hands. I realized he'd bought Marie a cell phone despite my objections. I smiled, knowing he was just trying to distract them from missing me. Over the next few months, I installed computers in the convent and taught the nuns how to use them. Each day, I returned to my room and watched my family. Grant cared for our daughters better than I expected. Despite his words, he formed a bond with Brandy. He walked with her, giving her ice chips for teething pain, and talked to her about her sisters and our relationship. Hearing him talk about how much he loved me in the past tense hurt deeply. It was even more painful to hear how much my betrayal affected him. After that night, I stopped watching him for a few days because I was too depressed. I began to see how deeply I had hurt him and wondered if what I did was worth it. I started doubting my plan, unsure if my husband would ever want me back. My sister was visiting my family more often and getting closer to Grant, which wasn't part of my plan. What I thought would take a few months was nearing a year. There were a few triumphs over the past 11 months. My father recovered from his heart attack, and when my mother offered to take Brandy, Grant refused, saying she had enough to worry about with Dad's health. He'd hold on until I returned, which made me believe his feelings for Brandy were growing. Another success was getting him the DVDs. Denny had a habit of recording his trysts, and I took the DVDs from him so no one would ever know what I did. One night, I heard Grant telling Brenda that he thought I had been cheating on him for weeks, maybe years, and was back in my old ways. It hurt that he thought I could do that. Brenda was the only one who knew where I was. I asked her to leave the DVDs somewhere Grant might find them. Brenda asked Grant if she could look through my clothes for something to wear while helping with housework, and they found the DVDs. Watching through hidden cameras, I saw Grant's reaction. The DVDs showed me lying on the motel bed, lifeless. Denny struggled to mount me, and I looked at the camera with a sad or disgusted expression. The conversations during and after lovemaking were telling. Denny made crude remarks, and I responded with disdain, making it clear I wasn't enjoying it. Hearing this, I hoped, would help Grant see I wasn't doing it for pleasure. A few weeks later, Brenda asked Grant how he felt about me. He didn't answer in anger, just said he didn't know. That made me happier than I'd been since leaving. Then, one night while holding brandy, she spit out her bottle and clearly said, "Dada." Grant looked angry at first, but then shook his head and gave her the bottle back. A few days later, Grant asked Brenda to watch the girls for an evening. When she asked where he was going, he just said he was going out. This worried me because if he started dating, I might lose him. In our state, I had only a few months before Grant could divorce me for abandonment, so I couldn't risk him starting to date.
I walked into the bar for a drink, but it wasn't by accident. I chose that place and time to find Denny, a local pervert who married a rich older woman. Despite her control, he had the time and money to mess around. This bar was his hangout. I wanted answers. He was already boasting to his friends about a dancer when I sat near his table and joined the conversation as if I knew him. "Dude, you've moved up," I said. "Denny, I've been in California for a year. You should see the chicks I brought back." "California women, huh? Maybe we should get together," he said. "I'm not sure you're up to it," I laughed. "Last time I was here, you were with some chunky chick." "Oh, please," he said. "Older married women are the real test. Getting a bigger, older married chick chasing you is something." I pretended to believe him and invited him to talk in the parking lot. His friends wanted to come, but I told them maybe next time. They paid for my beer, and Denny and I headed out, both grinning for different reasons. Denny, a big guy tamed by his wife, looked tough to smaller, domesticated guys. But he was like a zoo tiger, scary in a cage, but not so much in the wild. We got to the parking lot, and I sat on the hood of Denny's M3. "Tell me about the chunky chick from last year," I snapped. Denny loved telling his tales, so he started. "That witch was really into me," he began. I felt like I knew her from somewhere. She acted like giving me a head was her dream. She got so wet I thought I'd drown. We drilled for hours, and she came back for more, so she must have liked it. "Are you still seeing her?" I asked. "Hell no," he snapped. "I hit him and quit him. That witch wanted to leave her husband for me. She begged me to marry her and have kids. But I've never had a woman pin a kid on me, and I never want those vile little critters." He was about to say more when I strike him. My first punch stunned him, and he staggered back. "Why the fu—" he started, but I strike him again, and blood erupted from his face. "You broke my nose!" he screamed. "If you don't tell me the truth, I'll break your back," I said. "What do you want to know?" he asked, spitting blood. He had no guts, and my hatred turned to pity. I abandoned my plan to tell his wife because it would only hurt my girls. Denny didn't know Marie or Brandy existed, and it was better that way. "Tell me everything," I said. "Don't leave anything out. I'm not one of your friends, so don't try to make yourself look good. Just tell me the truth." Okay. The truth is I was shocked when she came on to me. Half the women around here don't fall for my crap anymore. My wife is old and doesn't want lovemaking often, and when she does, it's like screwing a corpse. I use a lot of hookers, so when this woman came to me, I didn't care if she was chunky. She was pretty and had big chest. It was free lovemaking. Why refuse? But the lovemaking was awful. She didn't even take her clothes off or let me touch her, and she called me names. He looked at me for a reaction. "I never thought I'd see her again," he said. But a few weeks later, she came after me again. The second time was worse. She didn't move and looked like she hated me. She closed her legs and tilted up when I came, trying to keep my seat in. She hated me, or maybe all men. She seemed like the kind of woman who'd cut your throat while you slept. He wiped the blood from his nose. She looked ashamed, or like she wanted to cry both times. I swear she had tears in her eyes. It seemed like she was punishing herself. She kept mentioning her husband, which was weird because most married women don't. They feel guilty and avoid talking about them. But she kept saying things like, "My husband's meat is bigger than yours," or "My husband does it better." It was creepy. I thought she might bring him next time to show me how. She didn't even want me to touch her afterward. Most women want to feel less used, but she just wanted me to leave. She even joked about coming and going. I figured she'd cheated on her husband, he found out, and left her. She hated us because her screwing around made her lose Mr. Wonderful. Life is strange and people are complex. He looked at me as if he'd said something profound. "Get out of my sight, Denny," I said. "But what about the California bit?" He caught himself. "Who are you?" he asked. "Mr. Wonderful," I said as I walked away. I had a lot to think about. I'd parked a couple of blocks away just in case. Denny was more of a wimp than I expected. He didn't even try to slap me. He just spilled his guts. I felt bad. I probably could have just asked him and gotten the truth. Plan B could have been to show him the videos, but when he called my girls vile, nasty critters, he deserved an back-whipping. Even though he didn't know they existed. Denny was an idiot. But losing control and resorting to violence was wrong. What if I'd gotten caught? Who would take care of my girls if I went to jail? Brenda wasn't the motherly type, and their grandparents were too old. It was just me. Bonnie loved them too, but where was she? The talk with Denny made me see things differently. Life isn't just black or white. There are many shades of gray. The only women in my life right now are my daughters and Bonnie's daughter. The thrumming of my Camaro's engine made me think more about my situation. There were many issues at stake. Did Bonnie cheat on me? Absolutely. The more I thought about it, the more I realized I was right. Her reasons didn't make sense. We were fine and might have had a baby eventually, but she had to mess it up. Neither of us was getting younger, especially her. If we'd waited, it might never have happened. Maybe there was a reason for what she did, but the way she went about it was totally wrong. We could have tried artificial insemination instead of her sleeping with some prick. The rest of the issues were murkier. Did Bonnie love me? I believed she did. Even Denny seemed convinced she loved me. Do I still love Bonnie? As much as I want to say, hell no, I hate that cheating woman. I can't. She's been gone for nearly a year. Brandy is starting to talk and walk. I haven't dated or planned to, but I wonder where she is every day and night. I'm sure she's found someone else and moved on, but I sometimes wish we could have worked this out. More than anything, I wish none of this had happened. But if I'm honest, I'm not sure that's true anymore. If it hadn't happened, I wouldn't have Brandy. And I can't pretend I don't love that little girl. I love her as much as the other two. She might not be my biological child, but she's the child of my heart. I'm more her father than Denny. She looks at me, calls me Dada, and if I have my way, she always will.
My time in the convent taught me unexpected things. Within a week, novices approached me to buy beer, pills, and other items. Apparently, the modern age had reached nuns too. During my previous time here, such women would never have considered joining the convent. It seemed the rules on abstinence and chastity had loosened. A few months ago, I found 2 men in the storage room who were supposed to be working on the north wall. My shock at seeing men inside the convent was secondary to my shock at what they were doing, screwing a novice. I quickly left. Later, one of the workmen offered me a quickie in exchange for my silence. I slapped him. Yes, I missed lovemaking, but not with a random guy. I missed my husband making love to me. Despite everything, I was a one-man woman. I missed Grant deeply and cried myself to sleep that night. Watching my family became unbearable as I realized Grant might never forgive me. It was enough that he seemed to accept Brandy. He might not claim her, but it was clear he loved her. The next morning, my cell phone rang repeatedly. Someone urgently wanted to talk. I answered sleepily. "Hello," I croaked. "Bonnie, get home now," said my sister Brenda. "Why?" I asked. "Grant went out last night," she said. "If he's dating, it's more reason to stay away. He's probably moving on," I said. "No, dummy," she snapped. "Let me tell you what happened before you jump to conclusions. You already made one bad decision. Are you ready to listen this time?" Brenda's harsh tone wasn't surprising. She's never been a people person. "Go ahead," I said. "For the first time since you left, Grant went out. We've tried to get him to go out before, but he never would. I was a bit jealous. If you never got back together, I thought I might have a chance with him. He's a good guy." I felt a surge of anger, but didn't show it. "Anyway, his big date lasted about 45 minutes, she continued. "Maybe they just weren't compatible," I said. "But if he's dating, he'll find someone." "Can I finish?" Brenda asked. "Sorry," I said. "When he came home, his hands were busted up like he'd been in a fight," she said. I gasped, causing her to laugh. "You still love him," she said. "Of course I do," I snapped. "I'll always love Grant. Get on with the story." This morning, a friend told me that Denny got strike up. His lip was swollen and his nose was broken. I visited the house early this morning so the girls could make me breakfast. I'm their only female role model since their mother ran out on them. Brenda, I said, beginning to cry. At breakfast, Marie said grace, and Grant mentioned your name at the end. Marie sneered, and Tara thought about it. After breakfast, I asked Grant why he'd done it. He said he'd been thinking about you. I asked if that's why he started dating. He smiled and said he'd never look for anyone to replace you. He wasn't interested. I asked if he still loved you. He said he loved you with all his heart and regretted not talking to you before driving you away. He hopes you're happy wherever you are and whoever you're with. But he didn't drive me away, I snapped. And I'm not with anyone but him. So shouldn't you drag your back home and tell him that? She asked. I didn't answer. I grabbed my purse and keys, ran to my car in my flannel nightgown, and took off without packing or changing clothes. At gas stations, the men didn't notice anything amiss, but women and girls pointed and laughed. My phone rang again. It was Brenda. I answered. Did you think about what I asked? She snapped. I'm giving it serious consideration, I laughed. Good, she said. You may be crazy, but you're a great sister, and I think you two need each other. And you may be an emotionless mannequin with no rear, but you're the best sister ever, I said, then hung up and focused on driving.
We got home late that evening. After all the drama during the morning drive to the girls' schools and daycare, I decided we needed a treat. The drama wasn't the girls' fault. It was because I mentioned their mom. So, we stopped at McDonald's for dinner, planning to eat and bond in front of the TV. However, Marie immediately started in as soon as she got into the car. Why did you mention her, Daddy? She abandoned us. We don't need her, she said. Marie, there's a difference between love and need, I said. I understand why you're confused. I felt the same way. I don't know why she did it, but maybe I didn't handle it well. I think she felt cornered and then left to think things through. Marie didn't know all the details. She only knew her mom had disappeared. No, Daddy, snapped Marie. She bailed. She left us all, even Brandy. She's no mother. You're right, Tara said, getting into the car. We talked about it all the way to daycare and then to McDonald's. Other issues soon took precedence, like Tara wanting a phone because Marie had one. Tara argued that since Marie got a phone at 14, she should get one at 10. She even joked that Brandy would need one by 5 to call if her applesauce was too cold. Marie dropped the bags of food when she saw Bonnie come out of the bedroom. Tara turned to see what caused Marie's reaction. I was holding Brandy's hand as she took a few steps. When Brandy saw Bonnie, she reached for me and started crying, yelling, Dada! Hi, Mom, don't I deserve an iPhone? Asked Tara, not missing a beat. What does your dad say? Bonnie asked, reaching for Brandy. Brandy cried and reached for me. Bonnie stepped back as I picked Brandy up. Why are you here? Did you forget something? Asked Marie. I missed you girls and your dad, Bonnie said slowly. Someone told me your dad might not be as angry. You should have stayed gone forever, said Marie, stomping away. So do I get my iPhone? Asked Tara. I took the food to the girls' room. Marie found a movie to watch while they ate, and I promised we'd talk later. I went back to the living room with Brandy in my arms, ready to put her to sleep. Wow, you made yourself at home, I said to Bonnie. She smiled. I came right here after talking to my sister this morning. I didn't change or pack. When she said maybe we could talk, that's all it took. Is there someone you need to call? I asked. She smiled again. There's no one more important to call than you. I could call the Mother Superior at the convent, but she told me many times to come home and face my problems. There aren't any other men in my life, Grant. There never have been and there never will be. She continued to stare at me. Why are you staring at me like that? I asked. Because I've missed you, dummy, she replied. And I've watched you do this every night for 11 months. You're the best father. What do you mean? I asked, feeling my anger rise. You've imagined me taking care of Denny's baby? Grant, she isn't Denny's baby. She's yours. She's afraid of me now. She's bonded to you. You're her dad. I was there when she first called you that. No, you weren't, I retorted. Yes, I was, she insisted. She grabbed a book from the shelf. Camera, she said. I have them all over the house. I couldn't be here, but I needed to see you. What if there'd been an emergency? I needed to know you and the girls were okay. You did great without me. The girls wrapped you around their fingers, especially Marie. You bought her a $300 phone at 14. No wonder Tara wants one now. She approached me slowly. You can throw me out, but you need to know I was right. I hate what it took to prove it. I imagined you holding me as our baby grew. It became an obsession. I believe she was yours. After being with Denny, I came home to you because I needed to pretend she was yours. After a while, I truly believed it. She stood next to me as Brandy snored on my shoulder. What I did was awful, she admitted. I deceived, cheated, and lied to you. I swear I'll never do it again. I just want to be with my family. I know I need to earn your trust again, but please give me a chance. So now we know why you're here, I said. Why did you think I was here? She asked. I thought you'd come to get your baby, I said. We discussed divorce and me getting custody of my two. I wanted nothing to do with you or Brandy. I remember, she said. If I'd offered to put her up for adoption, would you have taken me back? I thought a baby should be with its mother, I said. So you both needed to go. I wanted custody of my girls or visitation rights. What if I offered to take her off your hands now? She asked. I'd throw you out and see you in court, I said. You abandoned her. Grant, I was only making conversation. I wouldn't dream of taking her. That's not why I came back. Then why did you come back? I asked. Grant, I came back for you. I miss you every night. I love how you smile at me. I want to grow old with you. I came back because I can't live without you. Whatever it takes to get your forgiveness, I'll do it. You lived without us for almost a year. Why now? I asked. I missed you and my family. I want everything back. I held her hand and walked her outside. Bonnie, I'm an ordinary man with a simple life. Let me remind you of what you did simply. You wanted a baby to experience pregnancy again. You chose another man to get pregnant. You abandoned the baby and made me care for her because I signed the birth certificate. You used the law against me and spied on us. Did you notice something? She looked puzzled. It was all about your desires. You wanted a child, cheated, got pregnant, and then abandoned the baby. It was selfish. Now you return asking for another chance? No way, Bonnie, not happening. I considered it for my daughter's sake, but you're the last example I'd want them to follow. Bonnie was in tears. But you love me and the girls. Don't keep me away from them. At that moment, a man approached us. Can I help you? I'm looking for Mrs. Bonnie Henderson, he said. I pointed him toward Bonnie. Mrs. Henderson, you've been served, he announced, handing her an envelope before walking away. Any further discussion will be with my attorney. I've filed for divorce due to irreconcilable differences. I intend to keep custody of the girls, offer no alimony, and allow limited visitation. If contested, I'll pursue legal action for paternity fraud and abandonment. No, please don't, Bonnie pleaded. I love you. I just wanted you to be happy. My daughters approached. Time for you to leave, Mommy. We have homework, Tara said, leading them back inside. Goodbye, Bonnie. Bonnie stood there crying, then returned to the convent. She never attended the divorce hearings or contested the proceedings. The judge finalized the divorce, and I continue to live happily with my daughters. As for Bonnie, her future remains uncertain.